When Marty was a child back in the 90s, she tells Monsters Among Us that she was a fan of ventriloquist Edgar Bergen and his dummy sidekick, Charlie McCarthy. She says that when her father came across a ventriloquist doll as he wandered through a small magic shop located outside of Santa Rosa, California, he decided to buy it for her birthday. While ringing up the sale, Marty says the cashier gave her father weird vibes and said to him, "You know, when you put your hand inside the doll, he's going to come alive." Laughing off the comment, he brought the dummy home to his daughter. According to Marty, she was over the moon when dad gave her the doll, saying, "I was so happy when I got that doll, I was obsessed." But before long, strange things began happening. Though impossible because the doll's head was made of hard plastic, she says its expression would change, including his smile. Worried something would happen to her precious dummy, Marty's family shut it away in a cupboard most nights. One night, she and her family were awakened by the pitter-patter of steps in their living room. Thinking it was the dog or another family member, they went to look. No one was there, except for the doll who was sitting on the couch. "We remember specifically we always put it away because I loved that doll so much that I took care of it," Marty says on the podcast. Other strange occurrences began happening. While Marty and her dad were away, her uncle was alone in the house. The uncle says he heard Marty's father calling his name from the living room, even though he wasn't home. When he went to look, he found the doll once again, sitting on the couch, and no one else. "All of our family was pretty much scared of the doll," Marty says. "People would start hearing their names being called, and we would hear walking at night. So we just decided we needed to get rid of it." Being Mexican and religious, Marty says her parents wanted to burn the doll in case it was demonic. They put it on the grill and, according to Marty, it wouldn't burn. This doll would not go up in flames at all whatsoever. They tried cutting it up with a knife but were unsuccessful. Finally, they threw it in the trash can. After the garbage was collected, Marty's dad went to retrieve the bin. In it, the doll. To rid themselves of the dummy, they dug a hole in the backyard, then filled it with cement. Marty and family have long since moved away, but she says they still think about the doll and the possibility that eventually it finds one of us. Jacqueline from Oklahoma says that while her memories have faded over the years, she recalls having an imaginary friend when she was young. Her grandparents, Granny Junie and Pa Hank, lived in a small home with a quiet backyard. Jacqueline recalls visiting them as a child. "I have very good memories of my Pa Hank," Jacqueline says on the podcast, Monsters Among Us. "He would sit under the tree with me and tell me stories. The stories were often about his life and memories of Prohibition," she says. "He was actually a very interesting character. The only problem? Her grandfather died in 1981, and Jacqueline was born in 1982. I don't think I ever realized that I was getting stories from a ghost," she says, adding that the rest of her family knew of his presence in the house. "My Granny Junie would never stay in the house on the anniversary of his death," she says. "He did die in the house." Jacqueline also recalls hearing Pa Hank get up in the middle of the night when she was staying at the house. "It never occurred to me that these were memories of an entity," she said. In hindsight, Jacqueline says that even though her childhood imaginary friend was actually her dead grandfather, it casts a different light because it was a relative and not a stranger. "It never felt like ghosts. It felt like talking to my Pa Hank." On Monsters Among Us, a caller named Joe tells of moving to Georgia from California in the late 1990s. Soon after, he says his brother followed him to the Peach State and rented an old house built in the 1800s. "It looked nice from the outside. It did not feel good from the inside," Joe says during the podcast. According to Joe, things seemed off from the moment he helped his brother move into the home. "I walked into the house and went, oh man, the hair stood up on the back of my neck and I just felt ill at ease, like this place isn't cool at all," he says. Moments later, while carrying items into the bedroom, Joe says he heard whispering. A heated whispering, almost an argument, between two people that seemed to be hovering in the top of the ceiling area of the room, he adds. Joe ran out of the room and asked his brother if he'd felt something off about the house too. His brother had picked up on the vibe but assured Joe that things would be all right. "As long as you're good," Joe says he told his brother. "I'm not good, but I'm going to help you. I'm going home and I probably won't come back here." And sure enough, Joe's brother began experiencing unusual occurrences in the house. The most alarming, however, was when Joe says his young niece was found wandering alone on a busy road with her hand up in the air. Police and other agencies were called to investigate the incident, and when asked, his brother's 4-year-old explained that she'd gone for a stroll with the old lady that lives here. She just wanted to go for a walk, so we went for a walk. Given that the front door was too heavy for a 4-year-old to open by herself, no one could understand how she was able to leave the house. According to Joe, his niece said, "The old lady opened the door. Then we petted the dog for a little bit, then went for a walk." She was so genuine and honest at 4 years old that he couldn't call her liar, Joe says during the podcast. Soon after, his brother moved and never returned. Considered one of the most haunted restaurants in America, Stone's Public House in Ashland, Massachusetts, doesn't have a ghost problem. It has a ghosts problem. Janet Morosini, a longtime resident of Ashland, is the bartender and manager of Stone's Public House, which was built by John Stone back in 1832. According to Morosini, even before she began working at the inn, she heard stories of the ghost of a young boy roaming the halls of the restaurant, which once served as an ad hoc hospital during the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. It makes sense, Morosini tells Today.com. That's where they would quarantine all the sick people, she explains. Apparently, quite a few souls have passed just due to that. The inn is also the site for other untimely deaths, including that of a young girl who was struck and killed by a train while she played near the railroad tracks bordering the property. According to Morosini, a father and son visiting the inn stepped outside the restaurant to watch the trains. After coming back inside, Morosini overheard the father reassuring his young son that there wasn't anyone else outside, despite the son insisting he'd seen a little girl sitting beside them. He's like, "She was sitting right next to me. She was crying. You didn't see the little girl?" And the dad said, "There was nobody there. It was just me and you, buddy," Morosini recalls. Other ghosts are said to haunt the old inn, including that of proprietor John Stone, who Morosini says didn't actually die there, but is believed to be watching over the place. One night when Morosini was alone at the inn, she says she heard footsteps walking directly above her on the second floor. "I was just like, there is no explanation for that whatsoever. I'm leaving," she tells Today.com. Still, she doesn't believe that the spirits have bad intentions. "I've never had that scary hair on the back of your neck gotta get out of the building feeling there." In the 1990s, Julie, a resident of Portland, Oregon, was driving out the city to meet with friends when she found herself in traffic. The 18-year-old soon discovered that the cause of the slowdown was due to a dreadful car crash, and to her horror, as she passed the scene, she realized that someone had died. A moment later, there was a woman sitting in my passenger seat, Julie says on Monsters Among Us. Though she admits it sounds crazy, Julie reports seeing a woman dressed in work clothes seated next to her. And despite being in complete shock, the woman in the passenger seat was even more freaked out. She looked like somebody who just suddenly ended up in somebody else's car, Julie says of the incident. Panicked, the woman demanded to know how she got there and who Julie was. It was then that Julie noticed the woman had an unearthly quality about her, and realized that whoever she'd passed on the side of the road was somehow in the car with her. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. My name is Julie and I'm here to help," she says she told the stranger. Julie later went on to explain to the woman that she'd been in a car accident and somehow ended up in her passenger seat. The woman was stricken. At that exact minute, they passed a clearing in the trees. With some encouragement from Julie, the woman peacefully walked toward the sun, then disappeared. In completely disbelief, Julie pulled over and convinced herself she'd imagined the whole thing. Several days later, however, a story came on the news about a trucker injured in a car accident. Before they finished, they threw a picture up of the woman that was in my car and explained that she had passed away in the accident. Julie says during the podcast, "It was unbelievable. It was too much."